Good morning. Happy Mother's Day. Before I get started, I'd like to thank a few people who I feel like are my angels whenever I need them, and I don't know what I would do without their spirit and just their warmth, and obviously their knowledge. And one of them is Sally Height. She kind of saved me early this morning, and she's a strong woman, stronger than she even realizes it, and her purpose today was to be my strength, in addition to writing for people. The second is our pastor. She's more beautiful than you even realize, and I promise you that the only thing that we have in common with my reflection today is our names. So I will do my very best to speak to you in the best way I possibly can. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be blessed by you, Lord. The measure of a man. Not how did he die, but how did he live? Not what did he gain, but what did he give? These are the things that measure the worth of a man as a man, regardless of birth. Not what was his station, but had he a heart? And how did he play his God-given part? Was he ever ready with a word of good cheer to bring back a smile, to banish a tear? Not what was his church, not what was his creed, but had he befriended those really in need? Not what did the sketch in the newspaper say, but how many were sorry when he passed away. These are the things that measure the worth of a man as a man, regardless of birth. Anonymous. On September 19th last year, we celebrated our Happy Life Luau for my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, my dad's 73rd birthday, and my mom's 72nd birthday. This was a part of the letter that I read to my parents. To Dad, I admire you. Everything you do has a purpose. We sometimes have no idea what it is, but eventually we see that you know exactly what you were doing from the very beginning. For my dad, Isaiah 55 literally hits the nail on the head. His ways were not our ways. His way was always better, at least according to him. And as frustrating as it was, as much as we didn't want to admit it, it usually was better. The man who could fix anything or build anything or find someone that could to learn from and then do it himself. That someone was usually our neighbor, Will Patel, for anybody who knows him or knew him. I spoke of both of them at Will's service, and I always thought they would build my house for me. One that would never fall down, withstood all elements, be unique in its design, yet simple in its function. I will have to build my house on my own now, and I will have to use what my dad and Will, and many others whose knowledge and experience that I've been smart enough to recognize, have taught me. God's purpose for my dad down here was done. Son, grandson, husband, father, grandfather, master crabber, actually master waterman, student, auditor, carpenter, board member, friend, Christian. My goodness, how many more could we add? He had his own purpose with each of us, and regardless of expense of time or energy, he found a way to fulfill it. On the Saturday before he passed, even though he tried, to have me help him with the keys for the community, and it was an epic fail on my part trying to understand his method. He wanted to complete his last task. His friend Jean had to complete it without him, even though she knew his method all along. So, this is what he would tell you now. Find a purpose. Keep it simple. Do it well. Overdo it with 32 bolts and screws like his immovable picnic table. Make it last, and do your best to laugh through the bad moments and savor the good ones. God had a new purpose for him. He will have the privilege of watching and guiding and loving it all with God's eye view as one of our angels. We could all use as many as heavenly possible, He'll just be teaching them all of his ways of doing it. Aloha, Dad. Mahalo. Thank you for being this little girl's daddy. Mika, aloha. You always have all my love. When Pastor Michelle asked me to speak today, I was mildly tentative. Actually, I was pretty worried because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get through part of what I had read at my dad's service. I was not sure I was going to be able to maintain my composure. My reflection might be too short or too long, or that repeating some of the words might actually upset or sadden people. Worry, worry, worry. Doesn't do any of us any good. And then I thought, when a pastor asks you to do something, you're not really supposed to say no, right? Right. So here I am. I have to say, though, that we have a very unique and special pastor. I knew I wanted to honor my dad, and God had planted a word in my head. Planted a word in my head. And that word was purpose. I called her and told her, and without hesitation, she sent me right to Isaiah 55, and she said, go right to the middle of the job. And there it was, and I started to cry. There were other verses I had thought of, I had read, and just said, well, maybe. But this was it. A God-planted word. Our pastor prepared the soil, and I had to sow it. If anybody knows me, or maybe this might be a surprise to a variety of people, I'm a humongous fan of the Golden Girls. And technologically challenged as we were, Sally can tell you, I tried to get an episode, it was in season 7, episode 19, to come up today to let me watch it. And although I had to shorten it because Rose decided she wanted to say some words that may not be appropriate for church, I was trying to shorten it enough. But the part in there that I really liked was when Sophia, everybody remember Sophia, this is Estelle Getty, decided to plan her own week. She decided to plan it, and she needed some help from her other Golden Girls, and she asked Rose to send out the invitations. But one thing that Rose forgot to do was tell people that she was actually going to be alive during this. So everybody came to the wake, and everybody was crying and sad, and oh my gosh, I just saw her last week, and how could this have happened? And all of a sudden, after they asked Rose, please tell me that you told people that she was alive, she pops out, surprise! How do you like my dress? And I think one person fainted, and everybody else giant gasped. And they basically said, how dare you, not be dead for your own wake? And then she turned to Rose and she said, you told them I was going to be alive, right? And of course, Rose just kind of sheepishly said, I made the hors d'oeuvres. The whole point of that was that she wanted to know how people felt about her while she was still alive to hear them say it. And when I came up with the idea to celebrate my parents, it was basically just that. It was so that people could tell them how much that they meant to them while they were still here with us. And it spoke to me. So God planted, and I like to call it God-driven. In my 43 years, I had felt as if I had never experienced God-driven, even though I probably have, as we all have. And until last year, on my dad's birthday, the idea was planted in my brain that we would need a celebration of life, and it would need to come soon. It was like he was telling me that it was going to be a hard winter, and my dad and mom needed to know how people felt about him, what impact they had on everybody else's lives, big or small, on this world, reminding them of what their purpose was. So, the happy life luau was born. I was not allowed to make it about the anniversaries or the birthdays. I had to make it about life. No matter what it cost, though, whether who would make it important or not important to come, contribute to the preparation, the setup, the treasure chest of memories, activities, etc., it would happen. And it did. And it was wonderful. So I move on to what the gist of what I need to say here is. Webster would state that the definition of purpose is the reason that something is done, or created, or for which something exists. A lot of good words in there that warrant some first thought. Done. How about when a project is done at work? Purpose in it, and it is complete. And the boss either likes it, or he doesn't. And you might have to do it over. And hopefully, he does, and it is complete, and there is a sense of relief, and it fulfills a task. Created, a very Bible-driven word. God created the world. He took the materials he had, and he made something. A blank palette to this beautiful world. Exists. Oh boy, the big question. Why do we exist? Or, what is the meaning of our life? Oh boy. And that is where this paragraph ends. Recently, I was talking to a colleague I work with about his mother. A healthy woman with no previous medical history. Her husband sees her sitting down and notices her face, recognizes that she's not responding to his questions about dinner. He knows something is wrong, and she tells him that he can't call 911. So he says, fine, I'll call 922. She gets to the hospital and they confirm the stroke. She is responsive and recognizes her family, just has trouble with her left side and slurring her words. It's treatable, they say, but we have to get her to a better place. They transport her to Hopkins. She undergoes a battery of tests and over the next 24 hours regains the use of her left side and is almost fully functional. There are plans to discharge her the next day. Everyone goes home for some rest. Morning comes and her husband and oldest son come to the hospital. She has lost the use of her left side again, cannot speak, and barely recognizes her family. She is now locked in. Syndrome, they call it. Albert says she can hear and breathe, but other than that, there's barely voluntary control over anything. She has been in this state since March 20th. Last week, Hopkins doctor said she was stable enough to move to a long-term care facility, closer to their home. Within 6 hours of that move, she has a fever of 107, vomiting profusely, and blood pressure through the roof. They state another stroke, perhaps induced by infection. At this point, family from around the world are flying in, and Albert is picking them up at 1 a.m. He asked me about the touch therapy I taught him, because he wants everyone to do the same thing to warrant her responses. Everyone has a shift, but most double up. When they talk about their normal day with work and soccer and kids, her eyelids open, even though there's nothing but a blank stare. Albert says they celebrate like they won the World Cup, as he's a soccer coach. Whooping and hollering, he says, something closer to what they remember about their mother. She celebrated everything about their lives, small and big, so they were paying her the same respect. I ask him how he's doing it. He comes to work, he coaches his soccer team, he frequents the airport, he is paying his parents' bills and his own. He says what I am thinking he will say. There is no other choice. He will tell you of how his parents come to America from Nigeria to provide a good life, a better life, for their family. He will tell you that his father had the opportunity to pursue a political career there, but his youngest son became sick with malaria, and he would not survive if they remained there. Albert would not have what he does if his parents did not make those sacrifices. So, there is no choice but to make sacrifices for them now and celebrate everything. His family are devout Catholics. His father spends most of his day at church now, in conversation with God. I asked him about their future decisions. His response is simple. We can only control today. And the decision is to do whatever she needs. That is my purpose now, Michelle, he says. I understand. I know everyone in this church understands. Mothers, purpose, interchangeable, don't you think? If you look on Facebook, Pinterest, e-cards, whatever your flavor, you can find a plethora of mother-related quotes. A mother is someone who always puts herself last, A mother is a person who, seeing there are only 4 pieces of pie for 5 people, promptly announces she never did care for pie. To Neva Jordan. A mother has a very tough, unrelenting job. The phrase, working mother, is redundant. Jane Stillman. I'd like to be the ideal mother, but I'm too busy raising my kids. Unknown. A suburban mother's role is to deliver children obstetrically once and by car forever after. Peter DeVries. Thus far, the mighty mystery of motherhood is this. How is it that doing it all feels like nothing is ever getting done? Rebecca Wolf. On housework, neurotics build castles in the air. Psychotics live in them. My mother cleans them. Rita Rudner. My mother would probably clean them too. Now, as always, the most automated appliance in the household is the mother. Beverly Jones. If evolution really works, how come mothers only have 2 hands? Milton Berle. I brought my own visual aid today. Everybody see it? It was a present from my brother and sister-in-law for Christmas. Everybody understand it? That just explains us, explains mothers. We're so busy we have no idea what's going on sometimes. Moving on to my next visual aid. On Friday, my lovely child Finn proudly handed me this tiny little pot with 2 stalks coming out of it. He has no idea what kind of plant it is, just that he had learned that they planted a seed in the soil. It was provided light and water, and it started to grow. For most mothers, this would be an awe moment, as their child hands them a gift, especially one that taught them about Mother Nature and how plants grow. Photosynthesis, oxygenating the air, etc., etc. For me, it is a freak-out moment. I am a plant killer. My capabilities of keeping plants alive are, shall we say, limited. I am not my mother. She is definitely one with Mother Nature, as most people know. I can do a variety of things in my life, but horticulture is not it. So I politely take the plant, tell him that we will do our very best to put it in a place where it can grow beautiful and do good for the earth, and I move on. It seems appropriate that the scripture today refers to our abilities to take what God has given us, use it for our own selves, as fertile vessels to cultivate our gifts, and be fruitful and accomplish what God has set forth for us. Last week, God helped Finn to receive the Catholic sacrament of First Holy Communion. I grew up Catholic, going through the ceremony of each of the sacraments, except for marriage and last rites, of course. Going through it with Finn, I remembered how much I appreciate some of the aspects of Catholicism, specifically the homage that they pay to Jesus' Mother Mary. Father Larry took the opportunity to combine the ceremony of Holy Communion for the children with May Day and the celebration of the coronation of Mary. Finn carried the pillow with the crown of roses. I will quote our beautiful pastor again, who posed a question to me as she guided my reflection. Can you imagine being the one whose purpose it was to mother God on earth? Talk about a daunting task. Most days, my greatest accomplishment is that Finn is still alive at the end of the day. Now that sounds like one of those e-cards. I do have to tell you that. I can't imagine what Mary was feeling most days, knowing what her purpose was, and Jesus as well, especially what his ultimate purpose was for us. She did her best with what she was given to help him grow and flourish and accomplish what God had set forth for him. There is a book that I have probably browsed through or passed by a few times and never really stopped and appreciated it. It is called The Purpose-Driven Life by Rich Warren. They have a daily devotional for adults, and they even have daily devotional for children as well. It has an app to go with it for those of you who want to go towards the technologically unchallenged area. If you need a quote to keep you going, or a Bible passage to relate to just about anything, this is your book. It didn't take me long to find a few passages to accompany my words today. Isaiah 44 says, I am your creator. You were in my care even before you were born. Proverbs 11, a life devoted to things is a dead stump. A God-shaped life is a flourishing tree. For those mothers who are certified horticulturalists, I tip my hat to you. For me, I know my gifts and I know my limitations. I know I can provide a home, an education, and a good faith base for Finn. With God's help, he will flourish as a Christian and eventually as a man who will find his own God-given purpose. That is all God asks of us as mothers and as Christians. As I think about the baptism that happened today, we go from baptism through our lives, through our own sacraments, until we reach that time when it's time to go home to Jesus. I think about the way that our purpose may change, and the way that God and our church and the Holy Spirit guides us. And I was reminded of that by our beautiful pastor. Let the Holy Spirit guide you with words that you have written and can read, and ones that you have not. So I say today that even though our purpose may change, let it be God-driven. Let it be God-planted. Sow it. Make it flourish. Provide the water and the light that it needs. And your purpose will be accomplished. For my thoughts are not your thoughts. Neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. As the rain and snow come down from heaven, and do not return to it without watering the earth, and making it bud and flourish, so that it yields seed for the sower and bread for the eater, so is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it. Happy Mother's Day to all mothers, new and experienced, future, angel mothers, animal mothers, grandmothers, to Albert and his mother, to our Heavenly Mother Mary, to my own beautiful mom. How will you celebrate your God-given, God-driven purpose today?